Hey book buddies, it's Katie here, and today I'm going to be doing my April-May wrap-up. I'm sorry for looking like a wreck, and for the lighting, and for being kind of quiet. It's 5:30 in the morning. I fly to France tomorrow to study abroad, and I have to sleep on the plane, otherwise I'll be really jet lagged. But I'm not good at sleeping on public transportation, so I figured if I stayed up all night tonight, maybe that would help. Speaking of France, I'm doing this wrap up a little bit early. It's not quite the end of May yet because I'm not sure how often I'm going to be able to film while I'm in France. I will be back in mid-July, so my schedule for uploading will be normal in mid-July, but I don't know how often I'll be uploading for the next couple of months, but I'm okay. I'm still around, but I don't know when I'll post this video. I'll try to film a little bit when I'm there, but I won't have my microphone with me. I don't have it right now, so the sound quality will probably be like it is in this video, so not very good. But maybe I'll try to post a couple of things. But I just wanted to go ahead and do my wrap up now, because I'm sure there will be some more books that I finish in May, at least on the plane. Like I said, I'm not sure when I'll be able to film this wrap up if I don't film it now, so here we go. So first in April, I read Searcy by Madeline Miller. All of the books that I read in April, by the way, I don't have with me anymore because I had to turn them back in at the library, but I'll put pictures up. Searcy is a retelling of Greek mythology surrounding the witch Searcy. It's really good. It spans over like hundreds of years, but it still managed to keep me turning the pages until the end. And you get to see a lot of different people from Greek mythology, like Odysseus shows up, Icarus, a bunch of people, Medea, and then of course a bunch of different gods and goddesses show up. And it was just really interesting reading about her life, and it made me so emotional. I will put a trigger warning for sexual assault because that's a big part of her story. But I will say that this is the only book that I've read in a while that didn't feel like the assault was in there purely for shock value. It actually handled it pretty well. I mean, it's hard to read, but she grows from it, and it like affects her life, and it changes the way she thinks about certain things. It's not something that just happens and then is just ignored for the rest of the book. Like, it actually mattered to the story, and it was hard to read, but I think that it actually needed to be there. Whereas with most stories, I don't think that it really has to be there. It's just something that the author wants to do so that there's conflict. But for Searcy, she starts turning men into pigs afterwards, which is just... Anyway, it was very good. I haven't ever read Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, but I'll probably seek it out now because I did really enjoy her writing, and I gave it 4.75 stars. The next book that I read in April was Malmuth by Sarah Perry. Sarah Perry was the author of The Essex Serpent, which, if you guys have been subscribed to me for a while, you know that I love The Essex Serpent. I read it and was just instantly obsessed with it. It's beautiful and perfect. And so when I found Malmuth at the library, I had to read it. And Malmuth is, I don't want to call it a fan fiction because it's not, but there's a book by Charles Maturin. It's very old, and it's about this Faustian sort of character called Malmuth who, I don't know, stalks people and drags them to hell or something. I don't know, I've never read it. This book is about Malmuth, but she's a woman, and she is cursed to roam the earth forever because she was there when Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary found the open tomb, but she denied having seen it. So God was like, well, fine then, you're cursed. And so she just walks around and she watches people, and when they have a lot of sin, she'll she'll watch them and discover all their secrets and then come to them and say to them, like, I've seen you, I've seen the things that you've done, and I still love you, and won't you take my hand and walk with me? And then she makes you walk with her until you die and your feet start bleeding and stuff, because she's very lonely. And it kind of reminds me of La Llorona, except not really. Like, she's not looking for children, but just the concept of a sad ghost woman who's just kind of wandering around sort of feels La Llorona-esque to me. But in Malmuth by Sarah Perry, this woman named Helen, who lives in modern day Prague, discovers the legend of Malmuth through some of her friends, and she ends up uncovering a lot of sightings and different documents. And the story is about her trying to figure out, like, is Malmuth real? Is this a real thing? And it's very spooky, and you're not sure what's real and what's not, much like the Essex Serpent. And you get to see different points of view from different points in time. There's a story that's set in Nazi-occupied Prague. There's a story that's set in ancient Egypt. There's one that's set during the Inquisition. And it's really interesting and very emotional. And Sarah Perry is so good at writing characters. And so even though the story is kind of almost a ghost story, it's really more about the characters and their raw emotions and the way they interact with each other. And it's just beautiful. And so at this point, there's only one book by Sarah Perry I haven't read. It's called After Me Comes the Flood, and I can't find it anywhere. But when I do, I'm going to read it. But Melmoth, I gave 5 stars. The last book that I read in April was Freshwater by Akwaeke Emezi, and it was so good. It was so good. It's about a Nigerian woman who, when she was born, it's very abstract, so just open your mind a little bit. When she was born, there were spirits and gods who went inside of her, but the doors to her mind or to her soul didn't close all the way. So she is there, but she's also aware of the different spirits and gods inside of her. And the story is told by these different spirits who are controlling her body. So one chapter will be certain spirits and another chapter will be a different one. And they tell the story of her life, and something very traumatic happens to her, and she ends up moving to the United States and just kind of navigating her life. It's beautiful. It deals with trauma, it deals with mental illness, it deals with gender and identity and sexuality and friendship and family. It's so good. It made me so emotional. I will say that there are tons of potential triggers in this book. Lots of very bad things happen to this poor main character, and it deals with a lot of very serious issues like sexual assault and mental illness. So if you're sensitive to those things, please be careful with yourself and make sure you're in a good place when you're reading this book, but I would totally recommend it. Definitely. And if she ever writes another novel, I know she's written some short stories, which I'm going to try to find, but when she writes another novel, I'm going to buy it immediately because it was amazing. So 5 stars. I only read 3 books in April because I'm terrible. But then in May, the first book that I read was The Witch's Daughter by Paula Braxton. And I didn't like it. It was bad and repetitive and boring, and the main character was stupid. And I did a full review of this book, and I will leave a link to that review in the description if you want to hear my more detailed thoughts on it. I just really didn't like it, and I gave it 1 star. So, next, I listened to the French audiobook for the first Harry Potter, Harry Potter à l'école des sorciers. I did that to practice my French. I'm not fluent, but I'm passable at French, and since I have Harry Potter essentially memorized, I thought that listening to it might be a good way to practice the language. And I would recommend that. If there's a book that you know really, really well and you're learning a language, I think listening to that book in your target language is a really valuable way to practice. Definitely start with a book that you're already familiar with, though, because there were times when I would get sort of lost, and if I wasn't so familiar with the story, I think I would have been like, what's going on? Because, you don't have facial cues to help you figure out what they're saying. And I did get some headaches. It took me a little while to get through it because I could really only listen to a couple hours at a time before I was like, and normally I listen to books on audiobook sped up, but I couldn't do that with this one because I was trying to listen. It was also really just funny to listen to because of the way certain names were changed, and the translation of some things were just funny. Like Hufflepuff is Poufsouffle, and the narrator kept pronouncing Hermione Hermione, which is kind of funny to me. And some of the names are just changed. And I was reading an article about it, and it's because different names elicit sort of different feelings and emotional responses because they have a certain connotation to them, like Snape. That's not a word, but just the word Snape to English speakers kind of just feels a certain way. But it wouldn't have the same effect on somebody who spoke a different language. So some of the names are changed to kind of elicit that same response to French-speaking readers. So like Snape was changed to Rogue, and Hogwarts was changed to Poudlard, which I don't like. I think that sounds disgusting, but whatever. Also, wand in French is baguette magique, and I'm not kidding. And I love that with all my heart. The next book that I read was The Peach Keeper by Sarah Addison Allen. I bought this book at the used bookstore, and I found it on accident. I have been really into magical realism and Southern Gothic recently. Just the aesthetics of those two genres have been really appealing to me. And this book just happens to be both of those things, which was such a pleasant surprise because I've been having some trouble finding books that really fit this very specific genre that I was looking for. I'm a mood reader, so I was looking for something very specific, and this book just had it. It is about these two women who become unlikely friends because their mothers were part of this society, like this sort of sorority almost, that was surrounded by this mansion, and there's a peach tree on this property. And one of the women buys this property and discovers that there's a skeleton buried underneath the peach tree, and this whole mystery unfolds involving these two women's grandmothers, and they're just trying to figure it out and see what's going on, and it's very magical and beautiful. It reminds me a lot of Alice Hoffman's writing style, except better. And this author's writing style is just very feel good. It makes you feel like you're watching like a 90s rom-com, or like a touching night, like Steel Magnolias, but less sad. I really enjoyed it, and I gave it 4.75 stars. The next book that I read was actually a manga. It was Dream and Sun. It's the first issue chapter. What is it called? It was the first installment. But this is by Ichigo Takano. She is the creator of Orange, which is another manga that I've read and loved and gave 5 stars. And I've been looking everywhere for this first. There are a lot of apps where you can read manga on your phone, but I like to read them in my hands. It's just easier for me. And I could find Dream and Sun in a lot of different stores and in the library, but never the first one. And I finally found it. I was so excited, and I loved it. It's so cute. I'm definitely going to finish the series. It's about this girl who decides to run away from home, and she moves in with a bunch of boys from her high school. I love it. It's just exactly how it sounds. It's cute and funny, and it's a shoujo manga, which is my favorite genre of manga. I like the feel-good shoujo slice of life manga, but it was super cute. The artwork is very good. I can't really show you because I'm holding my phone, but it's good, and I'll definitely be continuing this series. The last book that I've read as of right now in May, I just finished like half an hour ago, and it was Garden Spells by Sarah Addison Allen. I enjoyed The Peach Keeper so much that I went to the library and checked out all of the Sarah Addison Allen books that I could find, and I have to return them because I didn't read them fast enough, and I can't take them to France with me, but it's fine. I'll recheck them out when I get back. Garden Spells was so cute and beautiful. It's about these two sisters. They are Waverleys, which the Waverleys have a history in this small town in North Carolina of being odd. Each of them has a specific, like, sort of weird skill. Like, there's this one elderly woman who's a Waverly who just sometimes feels the need to give people things. So, like, she'll give you some tape, and then a couple seconds later, you really need some tape, and wow, she just gave you some. One of our main characters, Claire, is really good at making food that has different meanings and can make you feel different things when you eat it. The other sister, Sydney, is really good at hair and cutting hair and making it make you feel good about yourself. So Sydney is kind of a wild woman. She has a daughter named Bay who's about 5 years old, but she is living in Seattle and flees from an abusive relationship. So trigger warning for domestic violence. It's pretty bad. It gets a little bit graphic, so just be warned. She flees from this relationship back to North Carolina to live with her sister Claire, and on their property they have a magic apple tree, and the apples from this tree, if you eat them, it'll show you the most significant moment of your life that will happen in the future. So some people will see when they'll die, some people will see like a moment that will make them really happy, just sort of depends. And the story is just about these two sisters reconnecting, and it's about the little girl and just family and friendship and love. There's a couple of romance plots. It's just beautiful. I really loved it. It was so good. Again, very feel good, very magical realism-y, which is just, I am so into magical realism right now. I love it. But anyway, Garden Spells was very sweet. Again, it felt like a 90s movie, and I gave it 5 stars. So those were all the books that I read in April and up until now in May. If I finish any more books in May, which hopefully I will add them to the beginning of my next wrap up. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all again as soon as I can with a new video. But until then, happy reading!